7, and most people are here. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'd like to welcome everyone to the January meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission, the first meeting of the new decade. So welcome. So we had Pledge of Allegiance. Before we have roll call, I'll take the liberty of introducing our new member, Jim Thering. Welcome. And overall roll call, please.
Cody.
Here.
Squattrito.
Here.
Webster.
Here.
Fuller is here. Darren.
Here.
Shingles.
Here.
Buckley.
Here.
Thering.
Here.
LaBelle.
Here.
All present.
Very good, thank you. So we last met on December 17th in a prior decade, and there are minutes from the December 17th meeting. So you've got those. Those were the next 3 pages in your packet. Are there any corrections to the December 17th minutes? I have to say, I didn't see any. I thought they looked pretty good.
Motion to approve the minutes. Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Motion by LaBelle with the support by Webster. Is that right? So we have a motion to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? All in favor of doing so, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we have our minutes. Next item is correspondence, board reports, and presentations. Board reports. Anything from the Board of Trustees?
The Board of Trustees passed a moratorium to update the township regulations regarding the sand and gravel pits. That's the big one. And then the next, the February 12th meeting, we'll be appointing the openings on the planning commission, or the new openings.
Okay.
The moratorium was for what?
The sand and gravel pits,
Okay.
to update the ordinances.
So could I ask, so is that reason why the postponement that we did last week is not on our agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, currently we have a moratorium for all applications, so that's why we don't have that application on this agenda.
All applications of everything or just sand and gravel pits?
Sand and gravel pits.
Okay.
Other questions for Commissioner Cody? All right, thank you. Zoning Board of Appeals, anything to report?
Yeah, we had a special meeting last night, actually, to review a couple of different items. One was the text interpretation regarding the definition of lots and parcels as they relate to properties that have been, and I always screw this word up, condominiumized. But in terms of how we define condominiums in conjunction with a lot or a parcel of land and what rights are provided to those. We also had, there was a text interpretation that was requested, that was approved in favor of the applicant's request. There was also a subsequent variance that was asked for in terms of the signage. The development that we're talking about is the Lincoln and M20 development. And so there's a variance that was requested based on that affirmative interpretation regarding the use of standalone and attached signage to the associated with those condominiums. That was the bulk of our meeting. I have asked, because we are in the process of going through our own ordinance, there was some questions about the ambiguity associated with our ordinance in that particular area. And because we're going through an ordinance review right now, I have asked Peter if, between Peter and the rest of the township staff, if they would be able to place an agenda item on the planning commission's agenda at some point in the future when they're prepared to give us a little bit of a presentation about what the ambiguous language was and whether or not there may be a desire among the planning commission to offer any clarification while we go through that zoning process. I don't know, Peter, if you had any other thoughts or anything else?
You summed it up good.
Any questions for Ryan? Okay, thank you. Sidewalks and pathways?
There was a discussion, a continued discussion about what the priorities are that we could bring to the planning commission and to the board of trustees in regards to sidewalks and what's our next goals to meet since our temporary, the waiver had, or the relief has already been established. So it was a lengthy discussion about what the next priority is.
Okay. Questions for Denise? All right. Peter, do you want to introduce these two items of correspondence?
Sure. So the under correspondence, you have upcoming available trainings. These are presented by MAP, the Michigan Association of Planning. These trainings take place in March, I believe March 4th, the 11th, and maybe the 18th. It takes place in Jackson, Grand Rapids, and Frankenmuth. These trainings are available. As our bylaws state, everyone is encouraged to attend at least one training, either held by MAP, Michigan Association of Planning, MTA, Michigan Township Association, MML, Michigan Municipal League, or some other similar organization of stature during their 3-year term. And so these are available. If you are interested, all you have to do is email me, let me know which course, what day, what city that you'd like to attend to, and I can sign you up. Tomorrow, I'll be sending out a follow-up email about reminding everyone about the trainings and encouraging any and all to attend who are available to do it, and I'll sign you up. In addition, if you are interested in getting future emails of updates from MAP, any kind of publications that they may send in the mail, also let me know if you'd like to get those delivered to you at your home address or sent to your email. I believe now for most people we get brochures and pamphlets sent here, and then we distribute them when we get them. So that's for the upcoming training opportunities. And then in addition, we have what's called the 9 Golden Rules of Defensible Decision Making. It's kind of until we are, for those who are looking for maybe some additional training or just an update until we can get to those March trainings. It's the 9 Golden Rules of Defensible Decision Making. This was written by actually our now new position, Community Economic Development Director, Mr. Rodney Nanny. He wrote these. These were published by MAP. And so please, if you haven't already looked at them in your packet, take time to read through them as sort of a refresher, maybe for the veteran members of the Planning Commission, and for new members, a good start to your training. So hopefully you make good work of that.
Okay, thank you. Presentations. I'll recognize our township manager.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to take a moment. Peter just referenced a new addition to our staff, Mr. Rodney Nanny. He is our new Community and Economic Development Director. It's a new department that we've created within the organization. Rodney started January 6th. And he has 20-plus years of experience supporting planning commissions, zoning board of appeals, done zoning code rewrites, master plan development, and he's responsible for all things land use. So you're going to see more and more of Rodney in terms of supporting the planning commission. Overseeing the building function, building official, building department, code enforcement, rental registration, and as I say, as it relates to you all things land use related. So we're kind of going through a transition period right now. I anticipate that I'm going to want to reach out to the chair, maybe sit down with the chair and Rodney for a little more in-depth introduction. I encourage all of you to stop by if you'd like, meet Rodney in his office anytime. I think he's going to be a great addition to the team and to the township as a whole. Look forward to working, of course, with Rodney and continuing the good work that we've been doing, staffing the Planning Commission to date, and continue moving that forward. So, thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Welcome. Okay, are there anything else that falls under correspondence, board reports, or presentations anyone has? Okay, so we'll move on to approval of agendas. We've got an agenda for tonight. It's got 2 new business items on it, and you have the appropriate materials that have been provided to you. Is there anything else that needs to be on tonight's agenda that anyone's aware of? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as prepared.
So approved. So moved. Move.
Motion was by Webster, was support again by LaBelle. Okay, so we have a motion to approve our agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have our agenda. So we'll move on to public comment. So at each meeting of the Planning Commission, towards the beginning of the meeting, we have a general public comment. This public comment is for items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if anyone is here for the public hearing, that will have its own separate allocated time for comments. So this is really for individuals to address the Planning Commission on items that are not on our agenda tonight. If there's anyone who would like to address the Planning Commission on any such item, they're invited to do so at this time. We just ask that you give us your name and address for the minutes and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Public comment is open at 7:13. And seeing no mad dash to the podium, we'll assume people are here for other purposes, so we'll go ahead and close that back up. We'll have extended public comment later on towards the end of the meeting. So, new business. We're ready to move on to our 2 new business items. The first one is a home occupation permit application, 20-01. This is going to be a public hearing. The applicant, Roy and Jerry Hoyt, address 2305 East Millbrook Road. And so I will turn this over to Peter to introduce the topic, and then we'll proceed to the public hearing.
So just to give everybody an update reminder, for those that are unfamiliar or who have not encountered a home occupation in quite some time, a home occupation is defined by the zoning ordinance as any primary or subordinate occupation conducted within a principal or accessory structure by the family, residents thereof, that is clearly secondary and incidental to the use of the dwelling for living purposes and does not change the character thereof. And so the property in question is zoned agricultural. An agricultural district is permitted a home occupation permit as a use. It requires a home occupation permit approved by the Planning Commission. And just to go over a memo that I supplied in everyone's packet for this item, to give you basically the reason for the request is the applicant has applied to utilize a new accessory building as a repair shop for oil changes and other minor auto repairs. To give you some history on the application, the applicant applied for and was given approval to construct an accessory building in December of 2019. Although the owner indicated to use the building for personal use, they also inquired about using the building for minor auto repairs as it relates to About Time Taxi Company. Applicant was informed that this would not be possible without first being granted a home occupation permit. The objective of the board tonight is to first hold a public hearing for the permit, next review sections 8.19.A through F, home occupations, and determine if applicant's home occupation permit should be approved. There is no approval required from the Board of Trustees for a HOP. Final approval is with the PC, Planning Commission. For your consideration, please review my key findings I've indicated. If anybody did notice, key findings are something new that I will be implementing and adding to future memos, beginning with this one, to try to help you construct a constructive dialogue when you're debating the issue, and highlight some issues that I found when reviewing the application. Key findings include the entire occupation must be conducted wholly within a principal or accessory structure by the residents of the dwelling on the premises. This does not allow for the occupation to take place outdoors. Any vehicles serviced for the occupation must be done inside the accessory structure. Outdoor parking or storage of vehicles to be serviced is prohibited. The applicant has not proposed retail sales on the property and would not be permitted retail sale of any product unless produced and sold by the residents of the home. The occupation must not require further parking on or off premises than already allowed for the residential structure. The proposed accessory structure that will be utilized for the home occupation meets all the Ag District requirements, Section 8.1 accessory buildings. The use of mechanical equipment is common with auto repairs. By if the operation is indoors and the hours of operation are from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., which the applicant has proposed in their application, then I see no health hazard or nuisance occurring for adjacent landowners. Given the occupation must be wholly conducted indoors, I do not see the need for any type of screening, such as trees, shrubs, fence, wall. And then please see attached floor plans and property sketch that are in your packet. My recommendation I put down at this time, I'd recommend approval of the home occupation, HOP 20-01. Of course, when we get down to our deliberation, we'll go through the criteria in Section 8. There is 1 through 8 different criteria we'll look at, and we'll see if you agree with my recommendation to approve. So the applicant is here. Remind everybody to make sure you're talking your mic so that everybody can hear you when speaking. And so the applicant is here to address us, answer any questions, and when we get further into deliberation, I can answer any follow-up questions that anyone else has as well.
Thank you. And you also arranged for the public hearing to be appropriately announced in the newspaper.
Yes,
and the
yep. Notification, newspaper, owners within 300 feet by law are sent a notice of the public hearing. And before we open up the public hearing, if you'd like me to read the notice, I can.
It's okay. It's just, you normally note that you did it, so
Yeah.
we did it.
Yeah.
All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hold the public hearing. So the purpose of the public hearing is to give members of the general public the opportunity to comment on this application to the Planning Commission, and for us then to take those comments into consideration. I do want to point out that the applicant will be given their own specific opportunity to present their proposal and to answer questions from the Planning Commission after that. So it's not really necessary for the applicant to comment during the public hearing. When people do comment, we'll ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes, and to limit at least your initial comments to 3 minutes. We want to give everyone an opportunity to speak, so once everyone who's wants to speak has had an opportunity to do so, we'll consider recognizing others. Please address your comments to the Planning Commission, and as I said, we won't really have a back and forth with the applicant at that stage. We'll take the comments, take public comments at the hearing, and then we'll move on to our deliberations. So with that said, I will open the public hearing on home occupation permit application 20-01 at 7:20. Is there anyone who would like to address the Planning Commission on this application? I always wait a little bit because sometimes people are shy. It takes them a few minutes to decide they want to say something, so we don't want to stifle public comment. Going once. Twice. Were there any written comments received? Okay, so there's no written correspondence on this either. Third and last call. So we'll go ahead and close it back up. Let the record show that no public comments were offered. If anyone runs through the door in the next minute or two and wants to comment, we'll consider reopening it, but we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. So at this point, if the applicant and/or the applicant's representative is here, they're welcome to address us on the application. Anything you'd like to say to us as a kind of an introduction, and then we will probably have questions, and then we'll do our deliberations. The applicants, are they here? Okay.
Mr. Hoyt.
Anything you'd like to say about your project?
I can't hear a word you guys saying. Sorry.
Sorry, is there anything you would, so you are the applicant, you're applying for this home occupation permit, correct?
I live in the house there, yeah.
But you're applying for a home occupation permit to use your accessory building for these oil changes.
Do minor mechanic work and oil changes, minor repairs.
Okay. I think that I'll just ask the commission, are there questions? Are there questions for the applicant that anyone has?
So it's understood there will be no outside parking allowed for the vehicles being serviced?
We also, they pick up their vehicles there, the drivers pick up their vehicles at the place.
So they park there overnight?
They park their own, sometimes there for, it's usually no more than 3.
So with our home occupancy, we allow none. If we granted the HOC, he wouldn't be allowed to park there.
I think he's saying the people that are coming there are parking for like 3 hours or something, right?
Right, and this specifically states not allowed outside.
We gotta be able to park the cars there.
Understood.
We gotta be able to, I mean.
And I think this is clarifying they would like you to park them inside until they're
Can't park,
serviced.
we're only building a 2-car pole barn. One will be for fixing the cars. We can park them around behind it. It's all farmland around us. But once we get it situated, they'll all be parked behind the barn. They're not gonna be out in the front.
Are these cars, you have a taxi company, is that right?
Pardon?
A taxi company?
Yeah, we have a transportation company.
Okay, so these cars are the cars that do that provide rides for people?
They give rides to people, yeah.
Okay. How many vehicles are there in total for this?
We have, I think we have 5 here and 4 in Traverse City.
Okay. So the 5 that are here are the ones that,
But they're usually on the road. I mean, there's usually not more than 3 vans there at one time, even on the slow days. They're
okay,
usually out 24 hours a day.
okay. All right. But if,
And most of the drivers that we have driving for us don't own vehicles, so we have to go pick them up and bring them to pick up the van they're gonna drive that day. And so
okay,
their car, they don't have a car there.
okay. And this has already been going on? How long has this been in business? How long have you been in business with
I
that?
think it's been about 3 years now, a little over 3 years.
Okay. How does that, I mean, is that a home occupation, or how does that work?
So are you stating that the business has been going on currently for 3 years there?
Pardon me?
Are you stating that the business has been going on there for 3 years currently?
Well, they were out of Travis City, but my sons are wanting to get this all done here. But the business has been in business for 3 years, about 3 years.
So the business is, but your home at, has your home been the location of the business? The business has been operating for 3 years, but are you stating that your home has been the?
We've been using my house for a while, yeah.
Okay. So that if it's has been used, then right now we would have a use that has been operating without a permit, and so to continue it, the home occupation permit would have to be approved. Otherwise, your home could no longer be used as a location for the business if it's being presently used.
What? No, I have to have the permit.
Yeah, but you have the taxi business has been in operation for 3 years.
Right, approximately 3
Okay.
years.
But has your home been used as the location?
They picked up the cars there.
So they've been currently just stored there?
Pardon?
So they've currently been stored there?
They've been picking up the cars and going doing their runs.
Okay.
So it's been being used
Yeah.
as part of the business.
Yep.
Pardon?
So
It's been being used as part of the business. Your home,
Parking,
yes.
Yeah, just for them to pick up their vehicles and so they can go to work. Pick up their customers.
okay.
But it seems like the home occupation is more than just oil changes in an accessory building. It's that and the kind of taxi service. So it's, which it sounds like would more or less require people parking outside, at least at some point. So, I don't know.
So would there be a requirement first to receive a permit to have the business prior to taking an action on the HOP request that we have here? Because this is for
But the request is not for the whole business. The request is only for the service
Yeah.
building. It's not for having a taxi service.
Yeah, no, I was saying, should we, to put it in sequence, should we be having a request for a service and then subsequently acting on this request?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like right now, there should not be a business there, if I'm understanding what's being asked.
Is there a different, knowing what we know now, is there a different permit in this district, in the ag district, that he can apply for that can allow him to park his vehicles and service?
Well, when you look at one of the requirements of a home occupation permit, it states home occupation shall not utilize more than 40% of the floor living area of 1 story of the dwelling, which would be the principal structure, the home, or 100% of an accessory building, and 10% of the living area of 1 story. So you are allowed to use the entire accessory building plus an additional 10% of the living area of 1 story. Typically, that would be for, I guess, an office of the
We got
of the
a little
occupation.
Key by room where they pick up the keys in our house. That's all they use.
Does the application have to change?
Well, and see, it was noticed as an auto repair shop in the accessory building.
And we're only gonna use half of
Yeah.
that because the other half's gonna be for our car. It's gonna be my building, not the company's.
It probably would be best to, if what the applicant actually desires is for the taxi service and the repair shop, it would probably be best to hold off and renotice a new public hearing, because this does change the nature of the application.
And even if he does reapply for the HOP, how do we get past the parking in the yard? Or even behind the
yeah.
building?
Well, our permitted uses in an agricultural zone don't even describe anything like that, so it's not a permitted use. Reading through the special uses, it doesn't really describe that as well. So I think you'd have to have a special use to the agricultural, or it would just have to go to a business district.
And then during the special use application, we,
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't describe anything in the special uses that would even fit that.
right, so not even an option.
Right. In
So,
that district.
yeah, well, and so I think the only way you'd have to get around it is if they were, parked within, concealed within an accessory structure.
What was that?
I think the only way that you could get around with the storage or the parking, whether it's for 3 hours or overnight or whatever duration of the time, it would have to be parked inside a structure. It wouldn't be able to be parked outside.
Okay, I'm a little confused with that, because according to this, it says he's got to provide parking provisions. So for the taxi company, if he has a parking provisions, but those vehicles are not being serviced associated with the accessory, so you have two operations occurring here. So he is allowed to park some vehicles because he can provide parking provisions.
Well,
What do you mean?
but you have to keep the home occupations shall not be carried on to the extent as to require parking on or off the premises in excess of that allowed for the residential structure in which it is located.
Which one's that?
That is number 3.
So he can park his personal vehicles outside, no problem.
Yep.
It's the about time business vehicles that are not allowed to be parked outside.
Well, and even number 1, the entire occupation is conducted wholly within a principal or accessory structure. I mean, this is a business that's not conducted indoors, really, or at least the taxi portion of it is not. So I'm a little struggling a little bit as to how this fits in the home occupation permit as ours is currently worded. I mean, certainly the fact that there was no comment suggests to me that whatever's been going on out there hasn't riled anybody. So in that sense, I'm not eager to, cause problems, but on the other hand, trying to figure out how does this,
How can we legally?
yeah, how is it consistent with our zone?
And I agree, I'm a fan of home-based occupations. Encourage that whenever possible, but it still has to be per our ordinance.
It sounds to me like we need some clarity.
Yep.
It's not an auto repair shop. It's
It's a taxi service.
a taxi service, and they're gonna service the vehicles in order to run the taxi service. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, so what I would
therefore-
recommend is that we don't carry on with this application. We can postpone it We'll renotice it if we need to, but I think the applicant, myself, and township staff, we can get together and we can come back next month with something.
Fantastic.
I'll make a motion to postpone HOP 2001.
So moved.
So there was a motion by Fuller to postpone with a second by Shingles. Did you understand what was said? I mean, we're trying to figure out how your business fits within the zoning ordinance. And so Peter and the other officials are going to meet with you to try to work this out so that we can consider it, but we're going to consider it at a future meeting.
We're gonna have to,
I'm going to call you, Roy, and we're going to sit down and we're going to rework the application to see what could possibly work for you. And if we have to renotice, we'll renotice, but we're going to postpone the application until next month.
It's the best bet at getting,
what?
it's the best bet at getting your home, your HOB. So,
I got 2.25 acres there that this building's being put up on. I just wanted to get in out of the snowbank,
Yeah.
working in the changing oil and stuff. That's the reason we're putting the building up.
Well, we understand what you're trying to do. We're just trying to, I don't think we knew before this meeting that you were already running a taxi service out there, and we're trying to figure out how that fits within the zoning ordinance, and it's not obvious how it fits. So they're gonna work with you to try to figure out whether the application can simply be reconfigured in such a way that we can approve it or act on it.
Well, I hope they can improve it.
Well, I understand.
Building to hold 5 or 6 cars would be pretty expensive.
Yeah.
We're doing the work on this one ourselves.
Okay, well, again, you guys will talk it out, and I think it'll help for them to understand exactly, how many cars are parked in any given time, all those details. So, but if you'd like to go ahead and have a seat again, thank you.
I'm just sorry I can't, my dog ate my hearing aid, so I can't hear hardly anything.
Okay,
ate your homework.
Yeah, that's what the students say.
so,
I do have a question,
yes.
before we finish this up, but does a lean-to on the back of the building with shelter over it, is that considered inside parking?
Good question.
That's a-
I don't have an answer for you right now.
But I mean, it's a simple, less expensive consideration if we would allow it.
Well, I think that the first order of business is for township staff to figure out exactly what's going on and put their heads together and try to figure out what to bring back to us. So, the motion was to postpone this until the February meeting to give the applicant and township staff an opportunity to meet and kind of hash this out. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries, so this will be postponed until February. So we will move on to item B, which is the proposed text amendment 20-01. This is also a public hearing, and so I will turn this over to Peter to introduce this topic.
So this item that requires public hearing, it was also noticed as required by law in the newspaper, notification of the public hearing. This is for a text amendment of our current zoning ordinance, similar to a map rezone application. If eventually adopted, it would change the text of our current zoning ordinance. And so keep that in mind as we are working on a new zoning ordinance. This text amendment is proposed for the current zoning ordinance. In my memo that I attached for you in your packet, the reason for the request is to amend zoning text to allow a larger than currently permitted multi-use structure. History of this project: in August of 2019, Brad Williams from ASL gave a presentation to the Planning Commission about a proposed project known as the Den of Broomfield. At the time, they were exploring options to make the project a reality. Later in November of 2019, Tim Beebe of CMS&D presented possible draft language for a text amendment asking for advice. In December of 2019, the PC Planning Commission recommended options for Tim Beebe with regard to a text amendment. Since that time, an application for a text amendment has been submitted. Objective of the board tonight: hold a public hearing. Following such hearing or hearings, the Township Planning Commission shall submit the proposed amendment to the County Planning Commission for proper action. The Planning Commission shall submit the proposed amendment along with its recommendation to the Township Board for consideration within 60 days from the conclusion of the public hearing. My key findings with this application: one, the master plan with regard to the mixed-use Bluegrass Center area states that the area could benefit from master planning, a character-based code, or planned unit development to ensure that future development is coordinated with roadway improvements. Section 31 of the current zoning ordinance permits PUDs, planned unit developments. The planned unit development is a method by which creative large-scale development of land is encouraged. The PUD is a device that makes use of varying lot sizes and integrates different building structures. Typically, structures in these developments are clustered in such a manner as to achieve the same overall density that would be achieved in the developer if the developer had laid out the development in a conventional grid zoning pattern. Current uses allowed as a PUD in the B5 are limited to only uses by right and the following: shopping centers and malls. Amending Section 31 to permit a mixed use could be better suited and fit in with the new zoning ordinance to create a consistent transition. And so what the application has called for is an amendment not to the PUD, Section 31, which I've read, but going over the application and all the work that we've done before then, in conversations with other township staff members, it appears that perhaps the better solution that could also create a consistent and smoother transition that would not only amend the current zoning ordinance, but could be something that we could easily then adopt and carry over into the new zoning ordinance, is actually looking to amend Section 31 of our current zoning ordinance to allow for something like this to become a use within a PUD. And so in my recommendation to you is that you tonight hold a public hearing as was legally advertised, but take no action following the public hearing. Use time allowed by ordinance to work with township staff and consultant McKenna to draft language for amending Section 31 in our current zoning ordinance in regard to mixed uses. Send application to County Planning Commission for 30-day review and comment. And so I'd remind you that after we hold our public hearing, our zoning ordinance allows you 60 days to review any application that includes either a text amendment or a map, zoning map amendment, before you actually make a recommendation to the Planning Commission. And I'm not suggesting that you have to use or that you use all 60 days, but we are under no obligation to have to make a recommendation tonight. Although I would encourage you to still send or instruct myself to send the proposed language to the County Planning Commission so that the 30-day deadline for the county to bring back comments on the application can begin, and so that we don't wait for that step when we do make a recommendation. So that's my recommendation. That's my report. We can hold the public hearing, and if you have questions after the public hearing, I can answer them. We also have the applicant here if you have any questions from the applicant.
Okay. Any questions for Peter at this time? All right. So we'll proceed to the public hearing as we did with the first public hearing. This is the opportunity for the general public to address us on this proposal. The applicant and the applicant's representatives will have adequate time after that to present their proposal and to respond to questions from the commission. So we'll ask anyone else who would like to address the Planning Commission on this text amendment proposal to give us your name and address for the minutes, address your comments to the commission, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Once everyone who wants to speak has had an opportunity to speak, we'll consider recognizing people for additional comments. So the public hearing on this proposal or this application is open at 7:46. Is there anyone who would like to address the Planning Commission on this application? Okay, I'm thinking everybody's here to, on behalf of the proposal or for other purposes. Second call, anybody, any public comments during the public hearing? And final call? Were there any written correspondence? I think there was one, right?
There was one, and you have it because I forgot to. It was just an email from another interested developer that was looking to do a similar multi-use project, and so this is from Julian Denna, real estate advisor from Farmington Hills, Michigan. I would like to comment on the restrictions on mixed-use development. I have clients that are interested in doing a mixed-use development, and they are not interested in moving forward because there would be too many restrictions. So that's the only comment that we had.
You received that on the 15th of this month?
Mm-hmm.
It's fitting. It's fitting, I mean, it just,
Yeah, I mean, the timing.
It was a coincidental phone call.
yeah,
And,
it's like,
Oh, it was
yeah.
coincidental, okay.
Yeah, he called, and I said, well, we're actually working on something like this, so.
Okay, I understand. All right, so final call for public comments from the audience. If not, then we'll go ahead and let the record show that no public comments were offered. There was the one correspondence. And so the public hearing is closed at 7:48. So at this point, I would invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to go ahead and address us if there's anything you'd like to say at this time about the proposal, and then obviously we'll have questions.
Good evening. My name's Tim Beebe. I'm with Central Michigan Surveying and Development here on behalf of the applicant. If I can back up a little bit, Peter, can you re-describe what you're talking about? You're talking about changing section 31, but we've got an application in front of you for a text change. Are you saying that you're looking at running these concurrently and seeing which one the Planning Commission likes, or I guess I'm a little confused.
Well, I think amending section 31 would possibly work better. We could still, when we sit down to discuss it, we could still offer both as options.
Because, PUDs are an interesting animal. They're not, tends to be like a contract with the township on how a development's going to proceed. The problem that you get into is what happens when you build the first part of the development. Perhaps it doesn't lease, or it doesn't move the way that you thought it was going to, and you need to change what you're doing on the balance of the property. There are some restrictions. Peter sent me an email today asking to sit down and talk about the wording in PUD. We actually have two of the owners and we have the architect here. we talked about our schedules, if there was any way that we could do it Friday morning this week. Does that work for you, Rodney?
Don't have my calendar in front of me, but
Okay. The doctor's off on Fridays. Our architect has Friday morning open. I have the whole day. If that works for you, Peter, if you can send me an email tomorrow. We're interested in sitting down and hearing what the options are on 31. If it is a better way of doing it, then it sounds like we'd probably be withdrawing. The other comment that I would have is when we first started talking about this at the last meeting, we wanted to make sure that although it was a change to the existing zoning ordinance, we didn't want to make a change that didn't carry over into the new zoning ordinance, because that's the last thing you want is doing something in the last few months of your zoning ordinance and then have it be a non-conforming after you adopt it. So I'd want to make sure that whatever we were proposing to do was what moved forward into your new zoning, that you're comfortable with putting it in your new zoning. So, it might be best to run both of these down the line and see which way the township feels that they would rather do it. Just from the developer's side, there's some issues with PUDs, and if we can get those worked out, then maybe doing it in section 31 instead would be better. But would we be starting from scratch, Peter? Having to renotice, redo?
I can look into that, see if we would have to.
Because, we're really hoping to be able to start this in the spring. This site is a clay site. We probably would be gearing up and getting contractors around and ready in May and turning them loose in June if it was at all possible. We don't want to get on the site too early, you just mess it up, but you also don't want to be on that site too late in the year because you have the same problems. So, we discussed this at the last meeting about, if we had to move forward, what the timelines were going to be waiting for the new zoning ordinance. But we've turned in what we believe to be a workable text amendment. We'd be interested in hearing what your comments are, so that when we sit down with staff and we're talking about whether this goes through one section or another, your input is important to all of us so that we know how to craft the ordinance, so that when we bring it back to you, it's as close as possible to what you're looking for. So, does anyone else have?
Brad Williams, ASL Architecture. Just to reiterate what Tim was saying, it is planned to be a phased development, and so we'd like, if it does go down the path of the PUD, we would like to have that flexibility in there to be able to adjust, and that's why we were going for the text amendment, looking forward to your revisions to your current ordinance and trying to get a little ahead of that and shed some light on your new ordinance too, to help on projects like this that are planned for that area.
Thank you. So I think my feeling is we should proceed and ask any questions that we have on what they're proposing, and then those potentially, that discussion might inform the discussion that they'll have on Friday, and then we'll see what ultimately comes back to us.
Well, I have a question though. So we are not acting on their application. Is that correct? We're not at this point acting on their application. So is that a postponement of the application, which then we come back to, because now you're talking about, is it section 23 or 30 that we're amending, or is it 31? So that's unclear. Your application says one thing, now you're talking about this other section. And so should we act on the application and then come back and say, okay, we can have a discussion about what they presented us for a possible text amendment, but we don't know what section you're amending. Is that what I'm hearing here?
Our application is in, so we're looking for you to move forward on that. Peter's recommendation was to do your discussions, and then there's nothing that says that you have to act tonight. You have a 60-day window. Obviously, we would love to have you act tonight because that moves things along. And if you think that it's a proper way to move forward, that's your prerogative as board. But we're not withdrawing our application if that's what you're wondering about. Because we need to keep
I
this
think
moving.
I thought you said I thought you heard that. I heard you say that you were willing to withdraw the application, but I misunderstood you, and I apologize. So that was my question. I've got it answered. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So questions on what they're proposing. I have a question. I guess I remember this discussion, and I remember what you're wanting. One of the things you're wanting is flexibility on the size of the individual rental units.
Right now, the size of the units, if we're looking at the adjacent uses and adjacent zoning, we have R3A. And what I was proposing to do is utilizing the same text that is in the R3A section for the housing portions, same size, same densities, to be utilized in that second story of the mixed use. So we're sandwiched between commercial on Broomfield and the apartment complexes to the back. What we're looking for is basically taking those two and merging those together. And yes, the size would be smaller. Another part of the text that is very troublesome, if you are building a 10,000 square foot building and you're only allowed 4 units, then I have to have units that are 2,500 square feet. And the market study came out and told us that actually what we needed is from studio apartments to single bedroom apartments. So obviously, having 4 units above a 10,000 square foot building, just it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that's we're looking for smaller units, more numbers of units. And another part of it was that shared parking between commercial and residential.
Right. But I specifically want to ask this, so we've got this page, which is where most of the red is. There are the 4 lines where it says for 1 to 4 units, the required residential square footage is 4,000 square feet per unit. For 5 to 6 and 6 units, the required residential square footage is 3,600 square feet per unit. I'm confused because the word unit is used both there. The 1 to 4 units refer to the individual apartments.
Yes.
But does the unit at the end of the sentence refer to the building? Because 4,000 square feet is huge.
No, 4,000 square feet of land area. That's land area per.
Oh, the land. Okay.
Yeah, and when you get
The
all the way
lots.
down to the end, then you're looking at, I think it's 2,900.
Okay. But that's the lot size.
That's the lot size.
Okay.
So that you're not trying to pack too many things on an acre-sized lot.
Yeah.
You have to.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's, again, I'm sure we discussed it, but I was really confused when I read that.
No,
All right.
that's,
And so, but in terms of the apartments, you want to go down to essentially a kind of a compact 1-bedroom as the minimum.
right. Yeah, no, that's intended for land area.
Okay.
What we were looking for is each residential unit currently is a minimum of 1,000 square feet. And if you look at the minimum size within the R3 district, it's 500 square feet. And then for each bedroom or each bedroom within the unit, you have to increase that size by 100 square feet.
I guess I'll also ask, and then I'll let people jump in. The height of the building, 70 feet. How many stories is that?
70 feet. The only reason that I put that in there is that is the same wording in the other.
Oh, wow.
70 feet would be 6 stories.
Okay. Okay. But the pictures you've given us, it looks more like 3 or 4.
It's 3 story.
Okay.
Tim's not trying to create something new.
Mm.
Utilize items that currently exist in your ordinance and just blend them.
Okay. Brian, any question or comment?
I don't have a question. I mean, I'm ready to kind of comment on what my thoughts are on the application, I guess. Generally speaking, I mean, I'm in favor of mixed use, and I can appreciate. In fact, I've noted in the letter that there was an offer to potentially share the market study, if it could be just shared just among the planning commission and not the public. I'd certainly love to see the market study if that's something that we could see. But I can certainly appreciate the desire for some smaller units. I would tend to agree that, limiting the number of units versus setting some expectations on the minimum square footage might be the better way to go. I guess my only take on it is, and I can see Peter's point as well, my take on it is that in order to get this right and make sure that we are having a discussion and making a decision that is going to be allowed to persist into the new ordinance, that I would like to get some input and conversation from the township staff to make sure that we're adopting language that would stand the test, not just for our current ordinance, but as well as new ordinance. So I'm generally supportive of the idea of mixed use. I would just be kind of in favor of taking a breather on this to see what kind of feedback we get, what might be the best way to alter it, which section might be the best way to do a text amendment.
Other comments or questions?
Building height. So, just help me with the math. So provided that any required yard shall be increased by 1 foot for each foot in height above 35 feet?
Right. So if you have a side yard that is 20 feet, and your zoning says, was it 30 or 35? But for every foot that you are going up, you have, it goes 21, 22, 23, 24.
Side yard.
Side yard.
Strictly side yard.
Yes.
Should we specify that?
Yep.
That's currently in your ordinance in another section.
Yeah, that's put an F here. It actually says that already. So why would that need to be added, Tim, if it already says that in here?
I don't think it says it in.
It references the numbers that Tim's referencing. If you look for those that have your zoning ordinance, it's section 21.
They give a footnote under maximum building height F. It says no structure shall exceed the height of 35 feet, except apartments may be increased not to exceed the maximum height of 70 feet, provided that any required yard shall be increased by 1 foot per hut.
The only problem is in the mixed use, it specifically states that you can only go 2 stories.
Oh, okay.
It restricts the height to 35 feet, but 2 stories, 35 feet. We're
Okay.
asking for 3 stories, and the building currently is at 35 feet.
But height restrictions, you're talking about your commercial, then looking at a mixed use and going into the apartments, which the apartments can go up to 70. So, we're trying to do some type of transition between them.
So Peter, your advice to us is to basically kind of hold off and let you guys talk and develop develop this alternative proposal or additional proposal or expansion on the proposal, however you want to word it. You're also suggesting to send the application to the County Planning Commission for the 30-day review and comment. Would you also then send this Section 31 one to them as a separate application? Because if that one ends up being the one that gets selected, we don't want to have to wait another month for them to look at it, right?
Yeah, any kind of new proposal will be sent to the county for their review.
Okay. And are you anticipating that, are you anticipating that we would be looking at whatever you all settle on, we'd be looking at it at our February meeting?
Potentially the February meeting, yes.
Okay. Because I'm also sensitive to the concerns expressed by the applicant in terms of wanting to, make a decision one way or the other so that they know whether they can proceed or not.
How much do we know about the mixed use out on Mission next to the McDonald's?
That'd be in the city.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep, just,
We've done a couple mixed-use projects in the township. In fact, one of them's yours, isn't it?
Ours?
Yeah,
Well, ours is the one next to McDonald's.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, you got the person right beside you that can probably tell you more than
Okay.
anyone else.
okay.
What is it that you were looking to?
Sizes,
Well, the leasable square footage is about around 7,800, 7,700 leasable square footage on the main floor. I think
that's the commercial side.
yeah,
Right.
yep, it's commercial, which the upstairs is very similar minus the stairwells.
But it's apartments, right?
Yes, yep.
Same size,
Each unit upstairs is about 1,800 square feet, 4-bedroom, 4.5 bathrooms.
Yeah, the difference there, you're looking at, you're backing right up against the college. So I think that was geared towards student housing. And this isn't geared towards student housing.
Yeah, our main focus was trying to maybe look at grad students. There's only 16 beds up there, was our focus. Yeah, they're high-end apartments, stainless steel appliances, granite countertops, luxury vinyl tile on the floors. So we were thinking that, more of a grad student or a medical student, it might be pretty good. But it's turned into kind of a mix of, students with medical students, grad students. There's a little bit of everything there, but definitely not families. So,
Well, and it's, if you're looking at family housing, something like Stonecrest, you're looking at 2- and 3-bedroom apartments, and that's not what the market analyst told us to shoot for. So, would we be against some of the medical students being there? Absolutely not. In fact, I think the doctor would probably encourage it. But we're not targeting the student housing market. That's not what this is.
young professionals.
Or just single people, 1 or 2 people.
Young
Yeah.
professionals.
My daughter's here going to CMU's medical, and she wanted nothing to do with being on campus at all. So in our case, we ended up buying her a small house here in town. This would be an option for us.
Because in discussions, we're talking about having private garages, things like that, as amenities that were suggested in the report.
Peter, is it permissible for us as a planning commission to accept, they've offered to share the market study with us on the assumption that we don't share it with the public. Is it permissible for us to accept that market study and review it without making that part of the public record? Can we do that?
I believe anything
Anything that we receive
Is,
becomes part of the
it
public
becomes
record.
part of the public record.
Any chance you guys want to
Market
just?
study really to be taken in by us, do we, you know?
if it's not part of the formal packet that's turned out, we don't have a problem with you having it, but it's quite expensive to do,
If
and
it comes
there's,
into possession of the township, it's public record.
I mean, I'd love to see it, but if I can appreciate your position of being concerned that it would be potentially, I don't know, accessible by your competitors.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a motion to send the application to the county planning commission for review.
Do we need a motion to do that?
Typically, it just comes with the, anytime I get a recommendation, I automatically send it, but in my recommendation to you tonight is to not take any action, but still instruct me to send the proposal to the county so that we can begin that 30-day review.
Okay. Well, would that instruction take the form of a motion?
Yes.
Okay. So your motion is to instruct Peter to share the application with the county planning commission?
For the 30-day review and comment.
So that motion was by Cody. Is there a second?
Second.
Second is by Darren. Further discussion on that motion? All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we would also, if it's the pleasure of the commission, we could also have a motion to postpone on this one.
Do we need a motion to postpone if we have 60 days to make a decision on the application? Because if they sit down then and decide that this is the best course of action, then would we need to make a motion? Could we simply just?
Yeah, you could simply state that you just will not be making a decision tonight or taking any action, but you will within your 60 days.
I guess my concern is that if they sit down with township staff later in the week and decide, well, this other section is the way that they want to go, that's what makes more sense. It sounds like they'll have to submit a new application, correct? New public notice and whatnot?
Possibly, I'm not 100% on, I'm going to look into that to see how
Okay.
much we can change and avoid maybe that, but
Okay. I'm just saying that in order to keep the application essentially active and ready to move forward, rather than making a motion to postpone or anything, just wait to act. Put it on next month's agenda. And they can make a decision to either withdraw or reapply or something like that.
I'll recognize the applicant for a brief
we're
comment.
just, actually, it's a question to staff between Peter and Rodney. How do you look at section 31 PUDs as having a better way of handling this, or how would you see it changing?
Would there be a different outcome? Because it seems like it would be a similar outcome or the same outcome.
if Rodney would like to speak, I'd defer to him.
I think Peter has already discussed that the PUD process has merits to consider in this matter, because it does provide potentially for some flexibility. I understand the applicant's concerns that there are some communities that have developed PUD ordinances that are remarkably restrictive, that puts lots of walls in the way. But the PUD option really does provide the best vehicle to consider this kind of project. It would still require an amendment to the existing ordinance to move that forward, but it does seem to be the better option. I think this is something best left, though, to discussion with the applicant. We're happy to do that, and with the idea of coming back at your next meeting with the results of that. So I would recommend for tonight, just for record-keeping purposes, that you do actually take an action to postpone further action until your next meeting. to make that a motion. So it's in the minutes as to what you are choosing to do. But it would then be on your next agenda as, for further review.
Okay. Can I just ask you, I mean, you're a recognized expert in this, and you know, I trust your judgment, but can you explain in a few words why it's a better option? Why the PUD?
Well, the Planned Unit Development process was added to the State Zoning Act many years ago with the exact idea of this kind of a project, one that where somebody, a developer's coming in with creative option, innovative option, something that the strict provisions of the ordinance did not necessarily consider or did not address properly. So it is the vehicle to consider this kind of creativity, this kind of innovation, and it is the best process to allow the applicant to come before you with a concept, and for that to be considered together with the potential rezoning of the land into a PUD district. So it's establishing a set of rules that would apply to this project. The applicant discussed the concerns about future phasing. Typically, the PUD has a concept plan associated with it, as well as a set of uses, a density for residential development. Those are all put in the package. That concept plan is then refined as the detailed site plan for each phase would come before you. So if a future phase had to involve changes, then those could potentially be incorporated into an amended PUD without necessarily going through the redoing the whole PUD process, but perhaps as a minor amendment. Typically, our ordinances, we would incorporate that kind of element that would allow minor amendments to the concept as development moves forward, because we do recognize that, especially in a phased project, that over time there may be adjustments that are made. The PUD process allows for that. The special use permit actually is less flexible in that regard. When you have a special use permit, that's what you have. You have an approval to do this X, what you said you were going to do, and to amend that then requires you to go all the way back through the review and public hearing and approval process again to amend that special use permit.
Okay, thank you. So if there aren't any further comments or questions or discussion, I would entertain a motion to postpone consideration of this text amendment until our February meeting for the reason that we're going to give the township staff and the applicant an opportunity to consult behind the scenes to determine what is the best way to move forward on this.
So moved.
Support.
So the motion, as articulately stated by Buckley, was the motion, and then it was seconded by Darren. Is there further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So we'll look forward to taking this up in February, hopefully. Other business, is there any other business that needs to come before us tonight? If not, then we'll move on to everybody's favorite part of the meeting, extended public comment. This is the portion of the meeting where individuals are invited to address the Planning Commission on any topic, whether it was on tonight's agenda or not. If you want to do so, give us your name and address for the minutes. Come to the podium and limit your comments to 5 minutes. So extended public comment is open at 8:19. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that back up. Final board comment. Any comments from board members?
If this truly is Denise's
Yes.
last meeting, it's been great working
this her
with you,
last
and
meeting?
congratulations,
Last
good
meeting.
luck in
I
retirement.
think I come off the 15th of February, so that's after the next meeting. So, yes.
So
you have
when those
one more
expiration dates
No,
are?
no. The 15th,
After the 15th.
mine is the 15th, I believe, and the meeting is after, it's the 18th, so then therefore I would be a member on
Okay.
the 18th.
Well,
October, February 15th.
February 15th, yes, and your meeting is February 18th.
So she won't be.
I won't be a member.
And you said, Commissioner Cody, you said that appointments are going to be made at which board meeting?
12th,
Of February?
yes.
Okay, so only a few days before that. But let me add my thanks as well.
Welcome.
It's really been great working with you. You've brought some valuable stuff, expertise, perspectives. That's the word I was looking for. Perspectives
Just
to the
remember that I
planning
can still come to
commission.
meetings and, there's a place that I can, do a public comment if I want to.
I think you told us you're going someplace nice though,
Yes,
so
in
we may have to
but I still got
Skype you
February,
in.
March, and April.
Great. But so thanks very much. And for the rest of us whose terms are expiring, we'll just wait and see. How's that? Any other comments from board members?
I would just like to thank Denise for her service, and I also thought, just because it's relevant, that I thought it was nice tonight that we adhered to rule number 6 of the, what were we calling it? What was it called? The 9 Golden Rules of Defensible Decision-Making, and that's to correct errors immediately. So I don't know if you guys read that ahead of time, but I was going to point that out, and I think we went to the same decision anyway, so. Yeah.
We also, I think we followed Rule 4. We asked for advice.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
And we followed Rule 3. We deliberated in public.
Yep.
So we're just following all the rules. Any other
So
comments?
does that mean we don't get sued tonight?
All right. So if there's no other comments, we've completed our agenda for tonight, so we'll stand in adjournment until February.